said and done. We will not stop drumming in your ears the endless possibilities that exist within the agriculture sector and the need to bridge the gap between what already exists and what is. Now, we already know that agriculture is a major industry, but a lot of people are missing out on the possibilities that exist. And that is why we have come with yet another episode of the Grow podcast, powered by the agriculture option, where, like the name implies, we give you agriculture options for the common goal of sustainability, especially for the common man. My name is Blessings Mosugu, and I am your proud host on the podcast. So sit tight, grab your cup of coffee or whatever it is you need, relax, and get on board with us because we are about to have a very interesting conversation. Stay with us. One question: is Agritech the solution to global hunger? So quick backstory here. We have a global crisis in our hands, and that is global hunger. And I'm talking about world crisis. Around the world, there are people who are hungry and malnourished. Streaming it down to Africa, which is one of the major sources of food, we still have a lot of people who suffer malnourishment. In fact, the SDG goal number 2 is focused on zero hunger by 2030. But how feasible is this? Now, bringing it back to Nigeria, a country that has over 200 million people, yet we still have issues of hunger and malnourishment. Now you see how big the issue of agriculture is in this country. I mean, we should be talking about this country being one of the second or first largest producers in terms of agriculture, but we're still here having a lot of people who are suffering and even dying of starvation. What is the solution? Today, we will be asking the pivotal question: is Agritech the solution to global hunger? Agritech is basically the fusion between agriculture and technology. As you know, technology is what we experience in this fast-paced world. Everywhere you turn is technology. And now we're seeing, thankfully, a fusion of technology in agriculture because farmers are left with a lot of primitive measures, which slows down production, if you ask me. But now we have a lot of technological advancement, technological systems, which farmers can use. Another question is, do they even know about it? But this is not about to be a monologue. So I have with me a very special guest who will be joining us to discuss the fusion of agriculture and technology and what the opportunities and advantages are in the modern day world. And my guest is none other than the CEO and founder, Alpha Grow Nigeria Limited. And that is none other than Efejida Gbemisola. How did I do?
You did great.
I did great. I deserve a round of applause, but we'll talk about that later. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
So I know you as a superstar because there's a TV program that I watched. I don't want to mention the name, but you were a part of a competition and you did really amazing. You know, it was very inspiring, you know, watching you sell your business, sell your idea. How did that experience feel for you?
It was kind of challenging because there were a lot of great ideas from people from different parts of Nigeria, people trying to solve problems that are facing Nigeria currently. So it was more like just selling your business idea and trying to prove to, if not Nigeria, at least Africa, that this is what I'm about to do to, like, me in particular, to like solve the problem of food insecurity in Nigeria. So that's basically it.
Nice. And you did just that. You really, you know, proved yourself on the show. But let me not get carried away. Alpha Grow Nigeria Limited, what inspired you to think of that? What was the idea that motivated you to come up with that?
Yeah, first of all, I come from a family of farmers, and it wasn't my plan initially to go into agriculture. It wasn't my plan initially because I saw my granddad going to agriculture, also my dad. So I was like, no, I'm a lady. I'm not going into agriculture.
That's just like me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. So my mom was a tailor, and I'm like, nah, there's no way I'm doing this because I didn't like the hard work. But eventually I ended up doing it.
That's just the thing. So there are some things that are just unplanned. They say something like the best things come unplanned, or how do you say it?
Right?
Yeah. So it was basically the statistics. They say like 1 in 12 people go to bed hungry at night. So those statistics are enough for you to say, okay, let's just do something about this. With a growing population, because by 2050, statistics says the population of Lagos alone, I think it's going to be like 200 million people at least, or maybe 300 million. So what to feed these people, this growing population? So that's just the biggest motivation, like the hunger, the food prices in general, the food prices, the rising food prices.
And these things are not just hearsay. You literally can see them on the streets begging
Yes,
for food.
yes, exactly. And it's not like as if the prices are affordable, and it's not the fault of the farmers, basically. But we just have to do something at least, because we've all know traditional farming before most of us were born. Traditional farming has always been there, so we just have to fill that gap. Just like, okay, let's look for something that will complement the traditional farming we've all known. So that's why I just started.
So we've established the motivation behind it, but what was it that you set out to do? What was the solution that you wanted to provide, and how is that going so far?
Yeah, like the name goes, Agritech is infusing technology into agriculture. So it's just a modern farming technique. So basically, you, instead of planting with soil, you plant without soil. Instead, you use substrates like waste from other companies, like a coconut company now. People that process coconut or something, they are waste. We use it to produce food. So it's just basically infusing technology. So far, I can't say for now because I just started professionally 2 years ago. So everyone is trying.
Just started.
I just started because it's just like touching the surface.
Of course,
just like because there's still a lot. Because hydroponics, basically, it's tasking. It's a business that is quite tasking. Like, it requires a lot of investment, like capital investment.
Yeah, I was gonna go to that, the challenges that you've seen. I know that you said you're 2 years in it, but what are the major challenges that because thinking of a business and starting the business are two different things, right? And that's why a lot of people that do not properly map out where they're going, they end up stuck in the in the middle of it. So how has it been for you? What are the challenges that you've encountered, and what has kept you going?
Okay, first of all, like I said before, the investment is just like, it's basically high capital investment just to start a business, hydroponics business, or an agritech business in general. So how do I say this? It's very challenging. You can't, if you don't have the passion for agriculture, you can't say you want to go into agritech. You could literally give up in between and say, oh, I'm tired.
Like
I'm no longer doing
agriculture. We're not friends.
I'm no longer doing this, because you're imputing money, you're putting money. Well, before you get the return, sometimes it has high yield, but before you get the money, because people are not yet aware, that is one challenge. Because people are like, oh, if you are growing food without soil, are you sure the nutrients will be there? Are you sure this is good enough for consumption? So you trying to convince them and everything. People will still be like gambling. I'm like, no, I'm not doing this. Like, trying to contemplate that I don't think I want to eat this or something. So it's just like people are not yet aware of our form of agriculture yet. So that's one challenge. And also the road networks too. That is a big challenge because it is modern agriculture.
Yeah.
Taking the food from the farm to the table, to the consumers, it's a whole lot. Because the main reason why we're doing this, it's urban farming, modern farming. So you are doing the farm to table technique. So if you want to transport these things to people, we want to reduce the food miles, the amount of time it takes to reach the consumers. But at the same time, even with that, it's still a big challenge. So that's just one thing. And also funding. Like I said before, funding is just something else.
So the thing about some of these challenges is that I wouldn't say they're here to stay per se, but these are challenges that we've heard about over and over again. Like the issue of the transport time between, for example, some of the things that we eat from the north, before it gets to us here, is already getting spoiled, is already going bad, and it has lost value, right? So I completely understand that. So in terms of challenges as well, you did mention that so many people are skeptical about the the safety of some of this food for consumption, and I would not entirely blame them, because we are in a dispensation where almost every food we eat is processed. Everything is imported, sometimes even down to noodles, the ingredients you use, everything is processed. And then medical practitioners will tell you that these things are harmful to our health. So how do you now balance? I mean, it's bad enough that even using the soil and everything is still we still end up with a large amount of processed food. So it's bad enough that you are coming up with this initiative and people are wondering, the one we have is not, we're complaining about that one. You're not bringing another one. So how do you balance that?
Yeah. So the thing is that growing without soil, growing food without soil, because soil itself, it brings these nutrients
Exactly
to plants, but we also infuse those nutrients into,
which means processed.
It's not processed.
Okay.
It's not processed. It's just like, how would I describe it? Like a sick person.
Okay.
Someone is sick, is lacking oxygen, about to like crumble, or about to die or something like that. So they'll say, oh, this person needs oxygen. You bring an oxygen tank, you use it for the person, just for the person to survive,
right?
At least. So it's more like the level of food insecurity in Nigeria. That is the reason why everyone had to go for this research that, okay, let's do this, let's do that, let's see how we can produce food without having to use soil, because it is grown in a controlled environment. We don't use pesticides. There's no, like we use sensors, basically. If there's pest pressure, like we're noticing that there's about to be like the need of pesticides, we'll clearly like tackle that situation. So there's no, like if you see the food itself, what we produce ourselves, you see that it's so much different from the ones, like if you see pepper now, you see holes in them and something like that. But this one is grown in a controlled environment, no pests, attacks or anything. So it's just basically like that. So by just trying to create awareness about agritech or hydroponics, let me just put it that way, that the way people see it, it's not
what it is.
It's not what it is. The way it's being portrayed.
Okay, so I have a lot of questions, popping up in my mind. But one of the major things that I'm particular about is a lot of times, people come up with some of these inventions, right? But it is now how this will trickle down to every single farmer, not just for commercial purposes, not just for industrial purposes, but down to the common farmers who are still heavily dependent on the primitive, measures, just planting, using the soil covering, and then, cultivating. In terms of accessibility, I know that this is just starting, but what is your vision towards making it accessible to every farmer that there is, hence multiplying the possibility of food sustainability?
Yeah, these things can't be done alone by private sectors. Like the private sector, we can't do this alone.
Of course.
We need the support of the government to do this, because if there's some sort of support from government, they could provide incentives and everything for these farmers, because most of the farmers are not going to their farm due to insecurity. So it's not, I don't do just hydroponics. I also train people on indoor farming. You don't have to leave your house. There's a little space in your backyard. If you used to produce things, you could produce potatoes in sacks. You could do those things, basically. So if you say, okay, I don't want to go into agritech, at least you could do some sort of indoor farming and just say, okay. So most times, like we said before, like technology, digital literacy too, like at least someone has a phone. Everyone has a phone now, even if it's not a smartphone, they have some sort of phone. So there has to be like some sort of offline way, like USSD codes and things like that, to be able to, for farmers in rural areas, to be able to get information on if their plants are having problems, if there's this problem with their plants and everything. They could be able to say, okay, this is what you do, this is how you do it. So if there's, how would I say, empowerment, because we can't do this alone. If the government should empower these people, they'll be able to say, okay, let's try this technique, because you could do it in your backyard. You could do agritech, hydroponics in your backyard. You don't need to go outside or go to your farm, go all the way to your farm. So you could literally do it inside. So if there's some sort of provision for that, people would definitely venture into it.
So the first thing, I should have done this a few minutes ago. Can you, explain hydroponics to the common man?
Okay. Hydroponics basically is planting without soil.
Okay, that's
planting. It's just a short form of explaining it. Planting without soil. So you plant using substrates. That is waste from different products, like from coconut or from rice husk, and you using nutrient solution to grow these foods and everything, instead of putting it in the soil. At least there's some sort of irrigation system providing water to the how do I say, the substrates, like I said, the coconut waste and rice husk. So that's irrigation system, the water that is being deposited into the substrates, it contains like nutrient solution. So that's what helps it grow. Like hydroponics make crops go faster than the normal traditional farming. So that's just.
I mean, from everything that you've explained, it's like a two-in-one solution: food sustainability and then climate control.
Yeah.
Because whenever we introduce waste, into a conversation, people think climate change. Yeah. And now we are making use of, basically recycling the waste and then making use of it to grow. So let's talk about climate change and how this would, of course, they say little drops make an ocean. So it's not like this is the only solution to climate change. But did you have that in mind when you thought about this? And how well would you say this would go in, cushioning the effect of climate change?
Yeah. Like, for example, now I started out as a cassava farmer. So if you're trying to process cassava, the peels of those cassava, you could convert it into animal feed. So the same thing with hydroponics. If you harvest crops, there's this agricultural waste. You will turn those agricultural waste into renewable energy. And also the same thing reducing food miles. If you are most times when you are transporting food from a long distance, it could contribute to climate change and everything. So if we're doing the whole hydroponics, the idea of hydroponics is just to mitigate climate change. That's the whole idea of hydroponics. So that was the main reason for bringing up hydroponics, because it is going to mitigate climate change. That was the main thing.
Amazing. Okay, so now you talked about government support, and that way I want us to push it beyond your own brand now to general agriculture. A lot of people in the sector, a lot of farmers complain about the fact that the government does not entirely prioritize agriculture as it should. I did say in my intro that we should have been at the level where this is another major source of revenue for our country, another major source of export for our country. But unfortunately, we're still reliant on just one source, which is fuel, and even that we're not doing very well at it. So what is the level of support that you would anticipate, or that everyone in the sector would anticipate, that the government should actually give to this sector, considering how important it is?
Recently, I don't know if I should mention this, I went for a summit at Ikeja. It was one Agrinovation summit. So I met with a lot of farmers just like me. They don't have to be farmers, it's just people in the agricultural value chain. So I was able to expand my network just meeting those people, and they were able to discuss these things. And the commissioner for agriculture in Lagos State, she said something about agriculture being the biggest employer of labor. So definitely they have to focus more on agriculture. And I don't know how they're doing about that, but it's still not enough, because agriculture, without food you can't survive.
Exactly.
We can't survive without food. So we have to be able to produce more, because there are other countries that started hydroponics years back. So those countries, they are more interested in, they already know about how we're struggling with food in Africa. So they have interest, luckily they have interest in wanting to invest in Africa's agriculture. So luckily enough, we're able to meet those stakeholders that, if you want to do this, you have to go through this and this one and that one. Even if the government support is not enough, at least you'll be able to get the support from stakeholders that can do the little bit that they could do. So I just feel government should be able to do enough, at least, because agriculture is very important. It's very important to produce more.
You mentioned that there's some countries who already, use the hydroponic. What measures do you think that they employ on a larger scale? Because you said that the private sector can't do it alone, right? We also need the input of the government. So what are the things that you've seen that these countries deploy deploy, because for them to be so established and successful with it, it's not just the private sector. The government had input in it.
Yes.
What are some measures that you see them adapting or deploying that we as a country and even as a continent can, emulate?
You said it. You've already said it. The government, they got 100% of government support.
Right.
Like they've gotten the support 100% from the government. So they did it in a way that, okay, there's something called vertical farming. And vertical farming, the main idea of the reason behind vertical farming is that let's take for example a library. You'd see that library in when you go into a library, they're like stacked up, books are stacked up vertically.
Yeah.
It's not just laid on the ground. Why? It's just to like use the space efficiently.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's what they do. They use all sorts of farming and all sorts of forms of agriculture, like trying to like use this method of vertical farming, things like that, just to in a controlled
I think I've seen
environment.
those in movies actually.
Yes. So those things like that, they actually use media. It's always like, or they use minimal water and less space. So those things, their government has already seen it that, okay, this thing is sustainable and is an innovative solution. So they've already gotten the support from the government 100%. So it's just, that's the main thing, the government.
So looking at the agritech sector in Nigeria, would you say that the lack of awareness is what's hindering the growth of that sector? Because, I mean, you mentioned the lack of awareness about some of the things, but Agritech, I'm not sure a lot of people have been successfully able to fuse technology with agriculture. Some of the people are still laggards in the sense that they're not willing to embrace technology. So they still have the conventional mindset. Do you think that that is one of the major challenges that would hinder the growth of Agritech in Nigeria?
Yes, because how would I say this? Everyone is still trying to scale their business. Like I said, it's not something that is easy to like go into. So you have to scale your business first before you say, okay, I want to train people on how to do this, on how to do that. So training people is not easy. Like you have to go to rural communities, people with low level of digital literacy. You're trying to tell them to go into this, go into that. They'll be looking at you like, what are you saying? Like, how would you tell me to plant that? So even during my forefathers' time, we're planting with soil, that kind of thing. So it's not easy to convince them. But I feel with the way the world is evolving and technology is advancing, I feel with time, people would start to accept that, okay, this way is actually a good way to go. And that level of digital literacy will like go up a little, and people would start to accept that, okay, probably we could go this way, that this agritech could be more of an innovative solution to us. So probably they'll start accepting that. Maybe.
Personally, when you look at AlphaGrow, where do you see how do you see your progress in the next 5 to 10 years, and what do you think you will need to get to that level, both from your own end, from the government, from the country? Basically, what do you think you need to get to that level?
Okay, so basically, in the next 5 years, I would have scaled my business to the extent that I would be comfortable training people.
Amen to that.
Yes, I'll be comfortable training people on this modern farming technique. And like I said, you can't do it alone as a private sector. You would always need the support of the government. So if there's this, we'll be able to develop, like, how would I say, educational content, like offline educational content and things like that, to be able to educate these farmers that this is the way to go. If you're unable to scale through with your traditional farming, this is the way to go. So in 5 years, we should be able to have put more youths or encourage more youths to go into agriculture. And at least even if they want to go into agriculture, they should even go into Agritech, because they're looking at this thing like a poor man's job. I don't want to do agriculture. I don't want to do this. So most times you see Agritech on its own, it's growing in a controlled environment. You don't really need to get your hands dirty like that to produce food. So they could consider going into that.
I'm glad that you went there. I was going to ask that, but I don't want to sound like a broken record, because I always try to ask, how do you relay this information to not even just the younger generation? Like you said, a lot of people see it as a poor man's work, right? And many people would see it as a last resort. In fact, some people would go as far as saying, God forbid, right? Because they do not understand what agriculture really is. And I think that it's because of what our country has made it to be, because we're still stuck with the usual normal farming. We're not thinking technology, we're not thinking advancement. So most times people judge by what they see. So I'm glad that you talked about that. We'll still get to that, but in the meantime, I want us to touch on the issue of security, or the lack of it in Nigeria. You talked about the insecurity issue in the north, and it's been a continuum, right? Because we've been hearing about banditry, terrorism, farmers going out and not feeling safe, farmers getting killed, struggle for land and all that. Do you also think that is one of the major challenges that is hindering our success in terms of agriculture? And why do you feel so?
Yes, because I don't think anyone wants to go to the farm thinking that they won't come back home, or your husband or your father going to the farm. I mean, like, you start praying that, I pray this person comes back home, due to the level of insecurity. So a lot of people have abandoned their farms, because now, for example, there are people in the western states that would want to start a farm in the northern state, because there are some crops you can go in the north and you can grow them here. But because of the fear of insecurity, that because of the fear of bandits and everything, everyone is just say, let me stay in my lane, don't let me go further than I can reach and everything. Let me just stay in the western state that I've always known. Not that I'll go there now, they'll go and kidnap me on the way or something. So everyone is just trying to stay on their own. So that's one major challenge. Apart from funding, it's one major challenge. People don't want to venture into something that they're going to take that kind of risk. But it's a whole lot of risk to venture into agriculture when there's insecurity involved.
Fun question. If you could venture into any other arm or aspect of agriculture, what would it be for you? Any other thing that catches your fancy in agriculture?
I don't think so. Everything is actually, in agriculture, everything is actually like fun to do. People might not see it as fun, because people will be like, this is how it has been portrayed already. Because when we're very little, our teachers always tell us, if you are misbehaving, they'll be like, you are misbehaving, you become a farmer. You are misbehaving, you become a carpenter. You are misbehaving, you be a shoemaker. That kind of thing. But I think with time, people have already known that, shoemakers are well to do now. Some carpenters are well to do now, because of the level of how they are leveraging social media and everything. Same with farmers. We're trying to show everyone that, this is not a poor man's job, and I think everybody should venture into it and things like that. So agriculture is just fun. I can say anything. I've not thought of it. Yeah. I've not thought of going into any
That's
other
an
thing.
assignment for you.
I've not thought of going into any other thing, but it's just something I've seen that, let me just go into this one that I've known, because you have to have the knowledge of this before you say, let me venture. You can't just venture into something you don't have the knowledge. There will be a lot of loss for you. You won't be able to get back that loss. You could literally give up in between. It's just like someone going to poultry farming, like livestock and something like, and you have no idea on how to treat your birds and everything. The person's going to
but that's also the thing, because many people think that you have to actually, like you said, get your hands dirty or venture into agriculture. But again, another thing that people don't know much about is agriculture investment. That's investing in things like Agritech, crops, basically everything. How lucrative would you say investment in agriculture is? Because that's another conversation that people are not ready for. I know a lot of people who every time they say, I want to invest in something, the first thing they think is land, right? And even the land, they're not thinking cultivating with the land, right? They're thinking building, because they do not think that it is lucrative. So can you speak on that?
Okay, agriculture is actually lucrative, but if it is done well, you'll get your profit. You get your profit. Like in the aspect of funding, like we go for pitch competitions because we are still trying to create brand awareness for ourselves. But there are some people, they don't have to leave their wherever they are, so they could literally be there at their office and funding is coming to them. They'll literally say, oh, I want to invest in your business and so on. But if people have seen that your brand is bringing innovative solutions, and they will know definitely there's going to be returns, and you can't just put your money into something you're not sure of. Like, invest your money in some sort of like business you're not sure of. Like, this person's business is very small. Like, we could all start small, basically. We know we start small.
Yeah.
But at least, if you want to take that risk, at least you start with somebody I know, okay, this is something that can actually scale through, like it's actually sustainable. So people just say, let me just invest in it. Because investments, at the end of the day, is a risk.
Yeah.
So you just have to like go on with it.
Okay, so one final question before I let you go. Talking about education and agriculture, right? Because most times the basic knowledge is what informs your perception of things, right? Do you think that the education sector is also to blame? You mentioned that when teachers want to scold a child, they're like, oh, you're misbehaving, you become a farmer. And that has somehow messed up with the psyche of the child, because in Western countries, you see people literally, it gets to a point where they're no longer doing general studies. People are studying engineering, and not in universities now, in, elementary, the basic school, and studying engineering, studying farming, and there's no stigma attached to it. But here, we don't exactly, we just teach it as general knowledge, or agri, home economics, and then that's it, right? And then when a child says, oh, mom, I think I'm interested, they're like, God forbid you be an engineer. It's not, So do you think that the education sector partly is also to blame?
Yes, because I forgot to add that. It was something I was thinking, I actually planned on doing, that we're going to collaborate with schools and government too. We're going to like add it like a compulsory course for children to like take a compulsory subject. Like, they should take this subject, try to do it. Because I watched a video recently, there was a child in this same Nigeria, but that school was like a big school, and this thing should be happening in every school. So the child planted a seed, and within weeks the thing was growing, and the child was fascinated that, oh, mom, see my plant, see what I grew, and something like that. The mom too was fascinated that, oh, my child grew this, and something like, because this school agriculture was compulsory. Like I said, if you are misbehaving in school, tell you be a farmer. If they want to punish you, they'll tell you, go and till that place, go and use cutlass to do this, go and do that. They should
as
make
punishment.
Exactly. And it's these things are meant to, not like cutting the grass or something. Like, planting is meant to be fun. Make it fun for these kids. Let them see that, okay, you can turn a seed to a crop, like food. You can use to produce food. Let them see those things. And when children see those things, as an adult, I'm fascinated by these things.
Yeah.
Every time I see a seed, even if I'm used to it already, every time I see it, I'll be like, this is actually fantastic and something like that. So if they make it compulsory for schools, like make these things part of the course for these children and make it fun for them, it will actually help in things like that. So the educational sector is not doing enough in that aspect.
I think that's a perfect place to draw the curtain. I mean, this has been a very insightful conversation, and this last thing you said, I don't think a lot of people are ready for that conversation, because really, farming and agriculture should be fascinating. It's not just you. Sometimes when I see seeds grow, I remember when I used to experiment with bean seed, and then I see it germinate. There's something it does to my mind, and children are generally inquisitive. So all of these things are supposed to inform, not force them to, be interested in that sector. But when you now make it seem like farming, planting, tilling are punishments. In fact, the occupation in itself, the profession, the sector in itself is a punishment. When teachers are saying, oh, if you don't study hard, you be a farmer, that's a faulty perspective. And I think that because they always say that charity begins at home, right? I think that is where we need to start correcting it from. I want to say a big thank you to the founder, CEO, Alpha Grow Nigeria Limited. I didn't stumble on that word the first time. Gbemisola Efejida, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for what you do with the Agritech sector. We wish you all the best, and I'm sure that in the next few years we'll be sitting here and you'll be like, oh, everything's going well, my staff, my this and that, and we're looking forward to seeing that. And like you said, these are the things that the government needs to invest in. We cannot say it enough, right? We're beginning to sound like a broken record, but honestly, if you see what works for you, imagine investing in it. It's going to yield 100 times more, 1,000 times more, Other countries have this information and that's why they're thriving. So why are we lagging behind? Anyways, it's been a very beautiful conversation. The question has been, can Agritech be the solution to global hunger? And from this conversation, the answer is simple. It is possible if we take steps towards it. Already, Agritech is a two-in-one solution, food sustainability and, of course, tackling the effects of climate change. So imagine what will happen if the government can collaborate with these private sectors, these individuals who are looking to make big statements with Agritech. It's going to be a wonderful solution to global hunger. So thank you so much for watching. My name is Mosugu. I want you to ponder on this until we come again with another fantastic episode of the Grow Podcast. Thank you so much for watching. Have a beautiful day.